Hey everybody, this week's episode of the Rahdo Q&A is brought to you by Elf Creek Games, and hello everybody. I'm about to answer a bunch of questions submitted by folks like you to the email address questions@rahdo.com. And by all means, folks, if anything I talk about or my wife talks about, because she sometimes shows up on these as well, prompts any further questions from you, well, you know what to do. Questions@rahdo.com is the email address. Keep them coming, folks. I want to hear your cues so I can am. And speaking of which, let's get right to it. But, folks, I'm going to talk about several different topics today, and if any of them don't really strike your fancy, don't worry. There are links down in the show notes that let you jump around from question to question so you can listen to just the parts you're interested in. All right, sound good? Then let's go. From Adriel, I believe you're not a fan of the Unmatched series, given it's a head-to-head combat game. They will be releasing a co-op version of the game, Unmatched Adventures Tales to Amaze, this year. What is your level of interest in this? Let's find out. Adriel, board game geek, Unmatched Tales. Come back over to the browser. Oh, okay, apparently I can't type. Let's try this again. Unmatched Tales. Yeah, Tales to Amaze. I believe I have marked that as zoom out. Nothing. Well, I am going to, let me confirm, this is it, right? Cooperative play, add to collection, wish list. I'm going to give that a love to have. I'm not saying it's a must have, but here's the deal. I did watch Kimberly when she did a run through of, what was it? Cobblestones. It was, I forget which one she did. I think it was the Invisible Man versus Jekyll and Hyde or something like that. And I thought, wow, that's a really cool game. I really like that. I will never play that game in a million years because it's all just about trying to beat each other over the head with our little plastic avatars. But us working together to come over to beat something else, yes, please. I'm very, very interested because I do think the combat resolution system of Unmatched is great. And if you're saying they're really digging down, which it looks like they're doing, to come up with a whole box that lets you, I'm going to assume, turn any previous character like these characters right here. Why are you asking to do it? My sitting on a box, Unmatched Jurassic Park. Here's the story there, folks. Paulo, the guy who does the goof directions on my channel, he loves Unmatched so much. And apparently, occasionally, there are characters for Unmatched that are hard to get, especially if you're in Europe. So every once in a while, he contacts me and said, "Oh my God, they've got 20 of these in this one online store in Idaho. Could you go online because I'm in Europe? I can't do it. Could you order it and buy it for me? And then once it shows up, I'll have you international ship it over to me." So we've done that several times, and we did it with Jurassic Park. But then somehow he was able to get a copy himself. And so now I do have a copy of Unmatched Jurassic Park. Clever girl. And now I need to get my hands on Tales to Amaze so I can put these dinos to the test. So yeah, no, that's very, very cool. I feel like, here's the deal. I thought I was going to come over here and find that, I'd marked it as wish to, want to have. Because I feel like I've heard of it, but apparently not. Apparently, or maybe I'm thinking of something else. You know what, I might be thinking of something else, because there was another dueling game. It was the one where every deck is completely unique. Was it Keystone? Key something or other? And they ultimately released co-op rules for that, so I really want to try that game. And now I very much, anytime you've got a super monster popular dueling game that I'd really like to experience that, but I don't want to beat Jen over the head and try to, smash her into the dirt. But we can work together to defeat a common enemy? Yes, let me try that. So anytime that comes up for a really successful, because I think if it's really successful, there must be something good there, and I'd love to experience it. So thank you for poking me, Adriel. I am excited. Not massive must-have, but I'm going to put that at level 2, which is pretty high praise from me. Okay, let's move on to Darren, who says, "If you have time to watch an hour-long interview, I'm curious about your thoughts. How this relates to your experience in the board game industry and where the board game industry currently is, etc." And there is a YouTube video. So it is an hour-long video. I'm not going to make people watch me watch an hour-long video, but here's the deal, folks. I watch most YouTube at 2 or 2.5 speed. So I'm going to pause for a little bit. I'm going to watch this video right now. And we'll be back shortly. Okay. Here's the deal. I have seen this video because I already subscribed to Savvy Writes Books. I think it's a great channel. And let's see. Let's have some fun. I don't remember the particulars because sometimes I watch long, this was her interviewing some popular writer, and I think he was talking about how, I'm turning to Patreon and stuff like that. And it was very interesting. I remember watching it, but I was about to say hundreds of hours of YouTube content a week because I watch everything at 2 or 3x speed. And I watch tons of stuff like this. But, so I am oversaturating my brain and I cannot remember even when there's good stuff. And I know I've seen Savvy in the past and I really like her channel. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to experiment, folks. I am going to take the entire transcript of this, and this is something you can do yourself. All right, so for folks who don't know, when you're on YouTube, you click the little dots on the right, and this is in a browser, not on a phone or whatever. You say Show Transcript. You, if the timestamps are on, you turn them off, right? Then you Control A to select all text on the page, copy. Then you open up any text editor, Notepad or whatever. New, paste it in. Let's see here. Oh, and you can't see that. Hold on. Let me. How can I? All right, I want to show you that. Okay, so here I need to go to a different view. I need to go to sharing my left screen. Where is it? I have so right. So anyway, so there we go. Here, this is what it normally looks like for me, folks. I've got Word on one, and then I've got the browser on the other, and I just switch between the two. But anyway, in Notepad, here we go. I have now pasted the entirety of all the text on this page. I don't need all the stuff at the bottom. I just need So here it is. Who cancels who is the last thing I interviewed. Blah blah. The name of the video is Brandon on the future of book publishing under capitalism. Alrighty, so I delete the end, all that stuff, comments from users and whatnot. Here's the actual transcript. There's going to be a little bit at the top, headers and whatnot that I don't need. Alrighty, and now I've got just the text. I'm going to save this as Sanderson, which I already did. I started doing this and I thought, this would be fun for you folks to get to see it. So, because this is an extreme experience. I did this for the first time the other day. I'm going to do it a second time now. Because in the last podcast, we talked a lot about AI. I'm going to use AI today, folks. So, I've saved that. Now I need to go to, Claude, right? Claude. And I need to log into Claude. There we go. Right, okay, and we can just go back to the browser view now because I'm just going to stay in the browser. Bloop. There we go. And you can see some stuff I've been asking Claude about recently. Oh, yeah, this was I did this test on one of my videos. I did a YouTube video summary, and, And then I also did some other stuff. Anyway, and then I started talking with Claude is the latest ChatGPT competitor. And I was talking with Claude, making it compare itself to ChatGPT and stuff. But anyway, here's the thing. I'm going to start a new chat with Claude. I am going to paste this summary of this video in. It's going to upload it. Claude, it takes a little bit. But then I can say, give me a... actually, I don't even need to. Here's the takeaways from Savvy's interview with Brandon Sanderson. Here's the deal. Claude, remember, I just gave Claude a video transcript that did not say when Savvy was talking and when Brandon Sanderson was talking. And yet, through context, Claude.ai was able to figure out, all they're reading is text. They don't hear voice. They don't hear inflections. They just have to Claude has to take an educated guess about who says what. But anyway, the summary of this video, Sanderson, shows Kickstarter as a recent book launch to tap into pre-order and fan engagement tools it provides. He sees it as a new model for authors who cannot to connect directly with their readers. Sanderson takes a hybrid approach to publishing, working with big publishers and also self-publishing, building his own company. He gives them more control and flexibility. He's concerned with Amazon's dominance in book distribution and how it limits options for authors and readers. He's trying to support competitors like Spotify for audiobooks. Sanderson doesn't see AI as an imminent threat to human-written books. He thinks handcrafted books will still have appeal, though AI could disrupt some genres more than others. Building an immersive universe around books with things like merchandise and leather-bound editions. I remember him talking a lot about those leather-bound editions and how his publishers just thought it was a waste of time, and then he went and did it himself and made a fortune off of it. He stresses the need for major healthcare reform in the U.S. to empower more people to take risks. And yes, he talked quite a bit about. This is an excellent summary of what I remember watching whenever it came up a couple of weeks ago. Overall, it's clear Sanderson thinks strategically about changes in publishing and tries innovative approaches to sustain creative career. He offers useful perspective on the industry's future. So, isn't that freaking amazing? Like I said, I watched this a couple of weeks ago. I don't remember all the particulars, but this is a really good summary of what I do recall. And if I wanted to, I could say, what did Savvy, did I spell right? Savvy, think of Sanderson's, let's pick hybrid approach. And I'm sure there's some dialogue in there that will figure out what Savvy thought. Now, of course, here's what I did. I did this a couple of days ago on an R&R show where it was me, Ruel, and Chris George. It was our top 15 travel games, and I put that in, and I started saying, well, I mean, based on the arguments that everybody made, Claude AI, what do you think was the best game? And Claude actually chose. It was one of Chris's games for a travel game, and it gave its reasons why, and I thought it was freaking brilliant. It was like spot on. They were really good, strong reasons for doing it. So Savvy says she's intrigued by going about a lot of industry. She praised his choice to start his own company. Said Savvy is the forefront of these types of innovations. And again, you got to bear in mind the official term is hallucination, where sometimes the AI does make mistakes. But this is just pulling text out of one document. So I think it's going to be a lot less likely to make a mistake. And here's the deal. When I did this on my own video, and it was a video I knew backwards and forwards because I'd watched the entire video and then I did this test, it was pretty much spot on with everything. So, this is absolutely incredible. Sorry, this is totally very, very far and away from Darren's question. But he wanted to know what my thoughts were, and so I've used this as a reminder of my thoughts. And interestingly, I think now that Claude has reminded me, without having to spend another half an hour watching the video at double X speed, what I saw and consumed 2 weeks ago, my God, folks, the future we live in, it's amazing. I remember the main thing from this video that really, I could use this to remind myself what I said in previous Rahdo talks-throughs. When Daniel continues the conversation, I don't remember what I used to say. Oh my gosh. Sorry, that's neither here nor there. I came away with it thinking, wow, this Sanderson guy, I've never read any of his books, but he's really sharp. And I do think, and everything he's talking about is equally applicable. I mean, the kind of stuff he's talking about is the stuff we take for granted. Crowdfunding projects because you can't get them done through the traditional mechanisms. That's now becoming a thing in the publishing industry in the way that it has been in the board game industry for quite a while. And it is kind of the future. But I thought the most important things, which Claude.ai did point out, Anderson towards the end really talked about, there was a little bit of talk about UBI. He said it. He said my magic words. He said UBI. He did talk more about healthcare, but it was in the broader remit that the reality is, it's what I've said on this podcast many, many times. We are heading to an amazingly positive utopian future. We're going to have some tough times getting there, but ultimately, AI is going to be able to do everything. Or more to the point, automation, whether it's AI or dumb machines that can just do repetitive tasks or whatever, is going to take away 95% of everything humans do. It's just going to. It's unavoidable that that's not going to happen. And it's going to require a fundamental change in all of humanity. I'm sorry, this is in the game section. Normally this stuff exists over in the, maybe I should have moved this. Oh, I'm here now. We're just going to finish. Right. All of this is ultimately going to lead to a fundamental change in what we think of it means to have a meaningful life, a life well lived. And we are going to throw away what we have defined as giving meaning to our lives for the last 100,000 years. We're going to throw all that away and come up with something better. And it's going to be because we will live in a post-scarcity society where everything is available at our fingertips. Everything is effectively free, and we have to find something new to do with ourselves. And that will be more about forging connections with others, sharing. It'll be about board gaming as much as anything else. Board gaming is primed because it's all about it's about sharing an experience together at a table rather than virtually across the internet. It's going to be a bright future for board games in this future world. And so I thought it was a great article. I think Savvy has a fantastic channel. And I've been a subscriber for a while. And I recommend anybody who wants to check it out, I will put the links down in the show notes if you want to go hear what Sanderson says about the changing book industry. And you could draw, believe me, it is unavoidable. You will see parallels to the board game industry every step of the way, because this is happening in, I'd say every creative industry, but it's happening in every industry, period. Because the world is going to change, and it's going to change fast. Okay, let's move on to Ethan, who says, in my recent, hold on a second, I'm very thirsty. Oh, sorry about that. I don't know how long I was going, but I just need to take a breather for a second. Anyway, though, so back to Ethan. And again, I do feel bad that, I definitely got into the personal Q&A stuff. I tried to keep all that stuff out of the game stuff. I'm sure there were plenty of people like, what is this garbage Rahdo's talking about, UBI? And it's getting pretty close to politics and whatnot. But, it's going to touch more. And I did bring it back around to board games at the end. Anyway, though, Ethan, get me back on track, man. In my recent Coloma New Prospects run-through, I said that if this had existed in 2019, Coloma would have been in my top 10. Let me add, my top 10 of that year. Not top 10 of all time, but yes, I think it probably would have. So, Ethan continues. If you were going to play Coloma for the first time with another experienced gamer, would you include New Prospects or start with only the base game? I.e., is this a Feast for Odin the Norwegians or a Terraforming Mars Prelude level expansion? I've never played either of those games, but always include both those expansions. I would say so. Okay, so this is not very broad remit. This is very specifically about this one. Yes. I don't think Coloma needed an expansion at all, but this expansion, New Prospects, was so transformative and so leveled up the game without increasing the complexity of the game at all. For folks who don't know, who didn't watch my run through, Coloma is a worker placement game where you are incentivized to try to put your worker in a place where nobody else is going to go, because everybody reveals at the same time where they're going to send their workers to do stuff in an Old West, frontier gold rush boomtown, right? And if you can be the only person to go to a given place, you'll get to do bonus actions. On the other hand, if you go to a spot where where the majority of people go, you will not get to do the bonus action, so you will get a weaker turn. So here's what you want to do, but then there's also you analyzing what everybody else wants to do and trying to stay away from them and wait until nobody wants to do it and then go do that thing. And that's already brilliant. It works great. It's fantastic. What the New Prospects expansion does that is so cool, so freaking cool, is it gives you a reason that you want, or I should say, when you go to a place that's overpopulated and you do a weaker turn, that's called busting. You only got to do half of what you want to do, and you want to avoid busting. In the 2-player and solo game, there's a virtual player called Buster who goes out of his way to try to make you bust. So you want to avoid busting, and when you do bust, it hurts, and it really feels like a big setback. And it's a bit demoralizing, but it's okay because it's going to happen to everybody, and you'll still catch up. It's fine. The Coloma expansion, New Prospects, gives you new buildings you can build that says, hey, when you bust with that building, you get to activate stuff. You get to strengthen up. This building doesn't do anything right now, but it becomes more powerful. And so, all of a sudden, you sometimes desperately want to bust because I want to power up this particular building. I want to get to level 3. And so suddenly, where before all your thoughts were right, how do I avoid everybody else? You'll often still think that because you desperately want to get a double superpower turn. But sometimes I've got 3 buildings that could power up if I could bust. I have to figure out where is everybody going because I'm going to go there. Even if I don't want to do that action because it means I'm going to power up 3 different buildings and I'll get a big payday later. That doesn't really increase the complexity of the game hardly at all, but it so broadens the depth of the game and makes you constantly, it's something I was talking about earlier in this podcast, games that can make you shake up an existing strategy because new opportunities come available if you can pivot are awesome. And so, that's what Coloma New Prospect does. It does it brilliantly and does it incredibly simply. So I would say, yes, this is an expansion that I wouldn't want to play the game without. I'd have a hard time going back to playing Coloma without Buster now, or without New Prospects. Question number 2, related to question 1. How often do you skip the suggested starting setup /scenario /hand of cards when playing a game for a first time with Jen? I would say almost 100%. almost 100% of the time, if the game comes with some method for saying, oh, for your first few games, here, just use these cards, or use this preset configuration of the board or whatever it is, almost without exception, I never, ever do that. Jen and I always say, okay, because here's the deal. There's two main reasons. One, I often find those presets to be very unsatisfying, because they are usually designed to take it easy on the player. Like Coloma. Coloma, I just covered this the other day. It is a worker placement where there's preset worker placement spots on the board, or you can take those, you can shuffle them up and change all the worker placement spots. And the thing is, it's a game about, you pick a XY coordinate, and that means you get to do two different actions on the X and Y position. So I played it randomized the first time with Jen. I randomized it when I filmed it. I randomized it when I played it solo, because I want to see more variety of what this game gives me time after time. I don't want to see the same thing over and over and over again. But so that's actually, I just jumped to the second reason. I'm trying because usually I will have played a game a few times before I film it. And then after I film it, it goes away. So I have a very narrow window of time with any given game, and I want to see everything it's got. So that's one of the reasons I do it. And the other reason I do it is kind of related to that, because those default presets, like Coloma is just fresh in my mind. There was a thing that said, hey, let's put at the X and Y coordinate of this particular worker placement space, this action needs $2. This action gives $2. And so I know they did that. They did that on purpose. They put that in a specific spot so that you would be very you'd be very likely to want to hit that particular place. And they did that with that sign. Now you still get that, but you get that combination in some kind of random way on the board. Whereas they wanted to put in a very specific board that was nice and central, because then that becomes the epicenter of where things are building, and it just means everybody's going to see that combo as so chef's kiss beautiful. They're just going to want to do it, and that's going to give the first few games. Everybody's going to kind of center around that thing because it's so gosh darn good, and they designed it that way, and that means the game's going to be a little bit more rote, and it's going to be a little bit simpler to find the easy, obvious stuff. And that means I'm not going to be playing the game for real. I'm going to be playing a kid's glove version of the game, and that's really my main problem. 9 times out of 10, when they have suggestions for your first few times playing, often those suggestions, there have been times in the past where I've followed those suggestions and they've literally ruined the game. Jen, I've said, yeah, I guess this game's okay, but it's really kind of flat and there's not really that much that happens. And that's by design. The developers did that because they wanted to make sure new players were able just to pick it up and go. But what came across as flat for us, for a new player, it's like, oh wow, look, we figured this thing out. And for me and Jen, it's like, that thing was really pretty obvious and on the nose. And wow, is that really the game? You didn't really make us work hard to find those cool combinations of cards and actions and resources and whatever else. So yeah, almost never. It's very, very rare. The only time I would consider it if it's an insanely complex game. And I would judge that based on having read the entire rulebook before Jen and I play. Maybe under those circumstances, I'll take it easy on myself. Or if it's a game, sometimes, there's one big exception to everything I just said. Generally speaking, when I sit down to play the game, I just want to play the game. I don't want to play a game before I play the game. And a game that would require a whole bunch of, hey, let's everybody draw 10 cards, and now let's draft for our starting hand of 7 cards or whatever. I hate that. So if a game says, hey, you know what, the first time, why don't you just give Bob all the cards that have an A on it and give Betty all the cards that have a B on it. I'll do those just because it lets me skip those annoying card drafts, like what you get in Terraforming Mars at the beginning of the game, which I despise those. So I will do it if it gets me into the game faster, and I don't feel like it'll lead to a compromised experience. And that's hard to suss out, but that very much be the only time I would do it. Question number 3, unrelated to the previous questions. I see that you have Marrakesh on your shelf. Did you keep it because Jen enjoyed it so much, or because it's a feld, or some other reason? I got rid of it. I did get rid of Marrakesh, the deluxe edition, because I was so incredibly disappointed. The only reason I would be disappointed by how badly my tower failed. Jen loved it. She didn't care. She said, okay, we can throw the tower away and just do the draft without. But to me, as a 2-player game, luck became Bruges level swingy if the tower wasn't working. So I got rid of it. And the only reason I tried it again is because, what was it? Man vs. Meeple. They did a run through of the Essential Edition, right? Which is what you can see on my shelf now. And they went out of their way to see, look, all those people who complained that the tower doesn't hold Keshies, this one's holding Keshies. And come on, guys, you can name it. You can call a spade a spade. I know you were talking about me. And that's okay. That's okay. So I saw it in action. That was the first time, because I remember I did watch some other videos. And it wasn't just my videos. Every video I saw of people playing with that thing, the tower hardly ever worked. And if it did work, it was only at a higher player count game when a bunch of Keshies got dropped in, and maybe every once in a while one would get held. And I felt that was wrong. And so it wasn't just my video, but I saw a lot of others, and but then I saw, Man vs. Meeple, and it was working. And I'm like, oh. Then I went and I looked at the rule book, and I saw that for this new version, they sent the same tower with the same basic construction rules, but they gave you an additional piece that said, hey, if you want your tower to hold on to more Keshies, if you want to be a more aggressive grabber, you can use this piece instead of the other piece. I'm like, oh, you know what that is? That's the publisher admitting they screwed up and fixing it. So I'm like, okay, I will give this a try, because I thought the game was great. It was just borderline broken if the tower wasn't working. And so I found that with this new one, I didn't even have to use the more hardcore thing. Just putting the tower together I've got right now. When the last time Jen and I played it, we were shocked when one time we dropped our 6 in. There were already like 2 or 3 or 4 in, and only 3 came out. And we're like, wow, that changes everything. We did not expect that to happen. And it was so much fun. It was so exciting, so quasi-predictable. Like, okay, the next round is going to be amaze balls, because there's going to be a flood coming out of that tower. And that's what I wanted, and it worked so well. And, there are still folks who say, hey, the first edition, it must have just been you, Rahdo. But like I said, I've seen other videos where it just did not seem to be doing anything, or very little. And what I found is, hey, when it does a lot, when it behaves like it did in Amerigo, things get great. So it's only when I saw that first of all, I saw it for the first time ever working the way it should in Man vs. Meeple's video with the Essential Edition. And then I read that, they literally made changes. So, okay, let's give it a go. And yeah, it's retroactively now one of my 10 best games of 2022, because it is fantastic. Jeffrey says, 1, I've seen teasers for Endeavor Deep Sea, and I'm wondering if you've checked it out. It's of any interest. It looks like a scenario-driven, solo, cooperative, competitive modes with a cool theme. Yes, I'm very excited about this game. I don't think I have to really dwell on this very long, because I've already been going for quite a while. But yeah, I'm really excited. I was kind of bummed. I was hoping that the publisher would contact me to cover it when it was fundraising, but they didn't. But that's okay. It just means I'll try to cover it later when it becomes available. And yes, I'm very, very excited about it. I got rid of my original edition of Endeavor to make room on the shelf for Endeavor Deep Sea. Okay, question 2 from Jeff Ree. I was a big fan of Yunnan when it came out in 2013, although the 2-player mode was inadequate. Oh man. Yes, the 2-player mode in the original Yunnan was terrible. Now, Spielworxx is set to release a Yunnan 2nd edition with some updated rules, including a better 2-player rule set that I believe involves an automa system. Have you followed it? It will supposedly be available at the Board Game Geek store at the end of July. Or have you been in touch with Spielworxx or Aaron Hogg about obtaining a preview copy? 1, I knew it was coming. And as soon as I saw it, the first thing I did is tell me how 2-player works. And I can confirm that, yes, they have implemented an automated 3rd player for the area control stuff. And considering how amazing the game was, except for its atrocious 2-player rules, I'm very excited about this. Now, here's what I didn't know. I had no idea it was going to be on sale at the board game. I figured it was going to be coming at Essen Spiel. So I kind of just made a note of it and then forgot about it. And I figured, after Essen had come and gone, I'll eventually write an email to Spielworxx and said, hey, these are the games that people really seem to love from the show. Would you mind sending me a copy? But knowing that it's coming in July, I got to beat feet. I want to play that, because it's been a long time, 2013, over a decade since I played, or almost a decade since I played Yunnan. But I remember being so brokenhearted because it was so good, except for the 2-player being so epically bad. And so I'm stoked. And thank you very much, Jeffrey, because I did not know that it might be sooner than Essen. 3, Of the older games you still own, like Dungeon Pets, Agricola, Escape, Curse of the Temple, Troyes, etc., which games are you more inclined to dust off on occasion and play with Jen? I understand time commitments don't necessarily allow for this, but if you could slip one in here or there, which would it be? Honestly, at any given time, let's see. I don't think it would be the really old games that I would go to. Because here's the deal. Games that I owned before Rahdo Runs Through, or in the early days of Rahdo Runs Through, like Escape, Curse of the Temple, and Troyes, I've already played those a lot. Because I used to be a normal person who only got a few games a year and played them a lot, as opposed to getting a bunch of games every year and playing them a little. So, I mean, I've played Dungeon Pets and Agricola and Escape, Curse of the Temple and Troyes, but all those games combined, I've played hundreds of sessions, just amongst those, over 100 sessions amongst those 5 games. So I don't think I'd be going for any of those. I'd be going for more recent games that I really, really loved. I'd pick any of my top 10s of years of recent past. The first thing that pops into my head is I want to play more Maracaibo with that cooperative The Uprising expansion. I only got to play it a little bit. I want to play through the entire... I mean, if I recall correctly, you can play through the entire campaign cooperatively, and that's what I want to do. I might be wrong. You might not be able to do that, but I want to do that. I want to play more games that have that are not oldies, but are new, but that I got to enjoy for a little bit, and then I had to put up on the shelf. That's where that is what would slip in here and there if the opportunity arose. Number 4 from Jeffrey. I find myself appreciating games that are streamlined in design with more simplicity of play. There are a few designers we enjoy that embody this, namely Kramer and Kiesling, Matt Gerdts, especially Concordia Transatlantic and his new one, and Rainer Knizia. Of these 3 designers, or design teams with Kramer and Kiesling, who do you enjoy the most and why? That's a good question. I'm going to say Kramer and Kiesling. I mean, they've been favorites of mine for the exact reasons you talk about. I also, and so does my wife, as we get older and older with, it's odd, at once more time to play games, and yet it seems like less bandwidth to play. It's mostly Jen, because life in America is just so much busier than life in Malta was. So much more stressful. Even now, after my mom is no longer with us, and that's a huge burden lifted, Jen and I both fine. I mean, well, actually, it's just switched from my mom to Jen's dad, who is now in assisted memory care. And so, when we lived in Malta for all those years, I don't think we appreciated at the time just how incredibly stress-free our life really was. We felt we had stresses, but no, that's nothing compared to what happened when we moved back to the land of milk and honey. So we find ourselves more and more and more appreciating a really brilliant, elegant design like Furnace, one of the best games, or Calico, or Tiny Towns, or the ones you're mentioning here. So... And I mean, Kramer and Kiesling have always kind of been the go-to. I mean, whenever those two get together, it's just absolutely amazing. I'm surprised you mentioned Matt Gerdts. I guess that's fair, but I don't think Mac is in the same class as Kramer and Kiesling. I think he's got enough crunchy, Euro-y, theme-driven extra rules that to keep track of. Certainly, Concordia is his most streamlined game, but I don't think he's anywhere near as streamlined as Kramer and Kiesling. And Knizia obviously is. That's kind of Knizia's bread and butter. But Knizia, often, I could take or leave his designs. Often, I think he doesn't care about two-player gamers. If you said, hey, here's the latest game from Matt Gerdts, the latest game from Kramer and Kiesling, the latest game from Knizia, 9 times out of 10, knowing nothing else, I would choose Kramer and Kiesling because I think they've got the best unbroken track record of really great designs. Not entirely. I mean, heck, what was the one with the dominoes? It was a, Serengeti Savannah style thing where there are dominoes and you're trying to place them. That was a pretty aggressive game. And also, I think it really kind of lost a lot with only 2 players. So, I mean, they'll still miss for us occasionally, too. And actually, I had no interest in Wandering Towers, as cool as that was, because that had a huge memory element. But those are kind of outliers. 9 times out of 10, Kramer and Kiesling pretty much nails it. I would say 6.5 times out of 10, Knizia nails it for Jen's and my taste. And Matt Gerdts, I don't think I've played a bad game of Matt Gerdts, but I just don't think he's quite as... I wouldn't put him in that same super elegant, streamlined play. So I'm going to go with K and K. Okay. Moving on, we've got a question from Yaya. which is a long one. I started to follow your channel several years ago as I was looking for playthroughs before I buy specific games. Your channel was the best of them all, and there was so much content already for me that I had no need to watch other channels. Now, we see that your channel is evolving and you're introducing many new contributors. That is definitely a move in the right direction as they can cover games you personally do not prefer. So, channel is now more universal. Great! And then it started to evolve even more as you started to bring non-run-through stuff more and more. I admit I like some of them more and some less. What is worrying me is that due to the fact that you spent your time on non-playthrough stuff, it probably reduces the number of run-throughs on the channel, and I personally like playthroughs the most. Did you set some balance or target for how many playthroughs you will cover versus other stuff? Thanks for the answer. All the best to you and Jen. Cheers. Cheers to you too, Jaja, or Yaya, whichever way it is pronounced. That's a fair question. And it's not that I'm pursuing more and more other stuff, like the Rahdo Runs Through, or the Rankening Show, or this new Q&A experiment I'm doing now. It's less that I'm bringing on more new types of non-run-through content. It is that I am doing less run-through content. And that is because, well, I kind of talked about it a little bit more. Jen's in my life is much more stressful now. For the last 5 years, our life has been so incredibly stressful compared to the last 15 years of our life in Europe, living in England and then in Malta. So it is harder and harder and harder for Jen to be able to just let go of all that stress and enjoy a game. We are probably playing 30% fewer games now than we were doing 2 years ago even, or let it go 5 years ago. I'd play over 200 new games a year. Now I'm barely, am I even getting to 100? I'm not sure. Well, but then the other thing too is financial. When it boils right down to it, the amount of run-throughs was always a reflection of how much money the channel was making, and the channel used to make a lot more money. When we lived in Malta, we made we ran Kickstarter campaigns too. Basically, my wife could be upstairs making glass. I could be working in the video game industry making an epic ton of money compared to what I make doing what I do now. But I don't want to do that, and Jen wants to continue making glass, so I don't do Rahdo Runs Through for fun, for free. I do it because it prevents me from having to work elsewhere, right? And so, part of my income, a small part of my income is YouTube ad revenues and ad revenues on the podcast as well. That's been a bigger fraction of my income, but still a very, very tiny fraction. The main source of income for the channel are two. The sponsored previews that we do for games that are on Kickstarter, and the sponsorship from fans of the show on Patreon. That's where probably those two sources combined is 70% of all of my income that I make to prevent myself from having to go back to work in the video game industry, which I definitely do not want to do. And the thing is, ever since the pandemic started and costs started going up on everything, my monthly income from Patreon has been dropping. Every month I lose a few more, and it's a net loss. I make a few, but I lose more. 3 years ago, I had about close to 900 backers. Now I have around 500. 3 years ago, I was making close to 3,500 a month. That's not true. I was making a lot less than that. Because I don't get all that money. Patreon takes a huge chunk, as does. I've been paying Paulo to goof check my rules videos for a decade now, and I pay him, I think, pretty well, very well. Every time I gotta bring out Revolut and send him, is that how much it was this month? Yikes. Okay, man, I love you. I would not stop paying you for a second. So a lot of the money goes to Paulo for goof checking me, and as I brought on more and more contributors, a lot of it goes to them. In fact, the Patreon, Patreon used to be bringing in upwards of 3,500. Now it brings in around 2,000. I get less than 50% of that. I get significantly less than 50% of that. I don't know exactly how much, but I pay the contributors more to do run-throughs than I pay myself. And so the thing is, there's just less income. So I'm doing less stuff. You're seeing, that's why you are seeing fewer run-throughs on the channel, because it used to be it paid a lot better. But like I said, every month there's always a few more people leaving than are coming in, and every single time there's like when you are on Patreon and I'm going to stop supporting this channel or whatever, you get a little questionnaire. Hey, why are you leaving? There's like a bunch of preset choices. You can type your own choice in. It's all anonymous. And every time, near 100% of responses are, my financial circumstances have changed. And I totally understand that. And I'm totally sympathetic to that. And I've always said to people, hey, do not put my silly little channel or me and Shay and Kimberly and everybody else before the needs of you and your own family. Of course. Times are tough. Inflation is getting under control, but and who knows, maybe things are going to turn around because inflation, at least in America, is on such a huge, it's plummeting. We're getting back to basically where we were at the start of the pandemic. It's the fastest dropping inflation in the world. Thanks, Bidenomics. And so things are getting better, definitely. But they've been very, very bad for a few years now. And so my income has dropped precipitously. And at the same time that's happening, like I said, my wife and I, our lives have become more and more and more and more stressful. So those two things combined just kind of make sense. Hey, let's try to, if we're not making as much money, let's try and reduce some stress by not doing as many run-throughs, by not covering as many games. And that's the simple fact of the matter. Maybe, like I said, as inflation continues to drop, things will turn around and, the income will start to climb back again and I'll start trying to do more run-throughs. That is certainly a possibility. Now, what I could do is, and what everybody claims I do is, Rahdo never does anything other than Kickstarter campaigns. When in fact, that's not true at all. Only about 50% of the games that I film in a given month are Kickstarter, on average. Because, of course, don't forget, actually, you probably don't know this, Jaja, but there are additional run-throughs you're not seeing, because they are exclusives for Patreon backers. If you back at $5 a month on Patreon, you get 2 additional run-throughs every month that you only get to see. So, there's the 3 that I do for everybody, and then there's 2 more right there. Then if you back at a higher level, the more Gen level, there's a 6th one that I do with Gen. So, as I'm trying to make gens in my life less stressful, and as our income is precipitously dropping for the same reason that a lot of businesses are going out of business, I'm like, okay, I'm not going to go out of business, but I'm sending more and more and more money to the contributors and less to me and Jen, and therefore I'm doing less and less. Or I'm trying to find more and more content that I can do that is significantly less stressful than a run-through. Because a run-through is, ask anybody. If you ever meet Kimberly or Shay or Amy and Maggie or Ruel at a convention, ask them how easy it is to do a Rahdo run-through. They will all tell you it is a nightmare. It is so hard to do, so much harder when you're trying to balance so much stuff, trying to articulate every thought process, put all the strategies out there for multiple players, keeping them in your head at the same time, while also trying to make sure that you're demonstrating all the core features of the game, while also trying to be entertaining and not having a lot of, dead space, and while also trying to make sure you're acting as your own camera person as well. It's super hard and very, very stressful. And so it just makes sense for me to do it less and less and try to be happier. And I'm sorry, Yada, that makes you less happy. And that's why I'm trying to find other things that are easier to do that I still think provide value, but they are different. And that's just kind of the way it is. Maybe things will turn around in the future, but that's kind of where we are right now. That's some straight shooting from Rahdo Runs Through. If I wanted, that's what I was starting to say. If I wanted to, I could do 20 run-throughs a month. I could do a run-through every day, and I would be making as much money as I did in the video game industry if I did nothing but sponsored Kickstarter previews. If I just stopped, I could ignore Patreon completely and just do paid Kickstarter previews, and I'd be, into 6-figure salary territory, which I'm very much not. And I'm not going to do that. And I only say that just as a would you people please stop saying that I'm a shill and a sellout and I do nothing but money? Because if that were the case, you would see nothing but Kickstarter previews from me, and I'd be, I would cover anything. I wouldn't care if it was good or bad. I say no, as does everybody else on the channel. We all communally say no to probably around 80% of every game that every publisher contacts us to do sponsored preview for. All of us say no to most of them because it's not worth the stress. It's so hard to do this. It only makes sense to do it if it's a game we actually enjoy. So, boy, sorry, that's a kind of a broad, wide-reaching, but you asked, and hopefully that answers the question, yeah. Okay. And that will be the end of this session of the Rahdo Q&A. Thank you, folks, for watching and also for submitting your questions. Send me more to the email address questions@rahdo.com, and I'll get you covered in a future episode. And in the meantime, if you would like to hear some more, you're in luck. I have been doing the Rahdo Talks Through audio podcast for years now with my wife, Jen, and we have got hundreds of hours for you to enjoy. You can hit that big box that's on screen right now if you want to dive deep. Also, you can go on ahead and subscribe so you won't miss the next Rahdo Q&A. And thank you, folks, for watching, for listening. Have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.